So the rationale behind why we wanted to do this presentation is that we were getting a lot of staff coming to us saying, I need to collect this data, or coming to us with paper after paper of handwritten information saying, here, can you do something with this? Can you organize it for me? Or in a Word doc and saying, I want to be able to tally this up. And so they were just throwing a whole bunch of stuff at Brooke and myself saying, can you clean up our data? Can you clean up our mess? And so the idea behind this is, if you're not using spreadsheets to collect your information, to collect your data, you're working way too hard if you have to then go hand type in all this information. Trying to use Word docs to collaborate instead of Google Docs. So we got a lot of Excel spreadsheets instead of Google spreadsheets. And so there was a big culture shift on trying to train our faculty to use sheets and forms to collect data. A lot of times they're in the mind frame of, oh, well, why would I use a spreadsheet? I'm not collecting numbers. And spreadsheets aren't just for numbers. You can sort anything, you can search anything, text, big long text, numbers, anything you want can be stored in a spreadsheet. If you're using a Word doc and using a table inside of a Word doc, you should be moving over to a spreadsheet. So that's kind of the rationale behind where this presentation came from. The benefits of using a spreadsheet: it's much easier to access data, to sort it, to tally it, to view it, color code it. Google Sheets has a lot of add-ons, a lot of formulas that you can use, conditional formatting. And I think the big thing for us was that they were trying to collect the same data year after year, but just from different groups of people. And so now by creating a form, it's reusable from year to year. We don't have to recreate the wheel every time. So the whole idea of automatically collecting that data and using our add-ons. So again, this presentation, I'm really going to focus on some of the best add-ons that we've seen so far, and then how we enhance those. On our spreadsheet, if you're not familiar with Sheets, we provided a tips for Sheets, and we're constantly learning new things about Sheets as we go. And we're pretty familiar with Sheets. One of our favorite, if you don't know this, is down in the bottom of a spreadsheet, there's a little hamburger icon. If you're not sure what that does, if you click on it, it pops up a list of all of your sheets in that document. Instead of having to scroll left and right, you can use a little hamburger icon, and then it's a quick link to that document. So especially on my spreadsheets where I have 50 tabs, this is a great feature. And then being able to freeze rows and columns. If you're not sure how to access add-ons, there's a tip there on where do you go to get add-ons if you've never used them before. And being able to turn on filters. So if you turn on your filters, it makes it easy to sort your spreadsheet. And then on the other page of our spreadsheet, we have some tips for forms. We get a lot of data coming in, so our teachers have started using forms a lot, but the data in forms is really messy because they're not really familiar with how to set up a form. So we've provided some good tips here. One of my favorite is being able to understand how to name a question. So if you're creating a form and the question name, don't put your entire question in the question name, because when it goes and populates your spreadsheet, it puts a big text box as that column header. And then as we try and sort through the data, we don't understand what that big block of text is. So use the question name as just like a brief topic, and then use the hint box as your long question. You can get as long as you want in the hint, and that doesn't get pulled into the spreadsheet. Makes it much easier for managing data and looking at your spreadsheet. One of the big ones we've had, if your data doesn't seem to be sending to your spreadsheet, try unlinking it and relinking it. That usually fixes the problem. And then the other one, how many of you use forms? Awesome. How many of you use the one that's like, check all of these that apply below? I love that feature, but it can be really annoying for sorting data, because what it does is it populates a spreadsheet with a comma-separated list of values, and then you want to separate by all those values. So one trick that we've come up with, instead of then having to do like a split with a comma, we started putting it in a grid and then putting all of our items in the grid as the row headers, and then a yes or a no as the column. And that way they're all in separate columns, and you don't have to then separate out your big long list of values. So that's been really helpful for us, especially if we want students signing up for a whole bunch of different events and then want to know how many signed up for each event. So those are just some of the tips that we've learned as we were going through building forms and some of the good practices. So again, all of our stuff is on our spreadsheet. I'm going to start off, again, they go in varying order, so the top is kind of the easiest, and then down towards the bottom is where I start adding in scripts. If you're not familiar with scripts or not comfortable with scripts, I do have sample scripts there and can show you how we use them, and they're completely adaptable to your needs. So I'm going to start with a Google spreadsheet and just some of our basic add-ons that we really, really like. So this is if we're collecting data. A lot of teachers were collecting data, and they had information, so we have mentoring groups, and they had a big giant list of all of the students in the school, and they wanted to separate it out by mentoring groups, or teachers were collecting data by blocks, and they wanted to separate it all out by blocks. And so what they would do is they would have to order their data by the block, and then they would literally go in and copy and paste, create a new spreadsheet, paste it into a new spreadsheet, and have to do this block by block. We've spent a lot of time copying and pasting from one sheet to the next. We found an add-on called RowCall, which is one of my favorites right now. And what it does is it will automatically let you designate what column to sort by. It will grab all the data and then separate it all, create a page for it, and then dump all the data into that separate page so you no longer have to do copy and paste. And then you can automatically update it. So and when you automatically update it, it doesn't repeat the data. It just automatically adds it in. Oh, so let me explain my links. So on our slides, the icon here, RowCall, this will link you directly to the add-on. So if you don't have the add-on, it'll link you to the add-on store with that add-on and explanation. And then on the presentation, the link up here, the after, is a link to our spreadsheet, an example of our spreadsheet of how we're using it. So if you ever wanted to look at how we were using it or an example of what it does, that's the link up top. So now RowCall is awesome. So what I have is what teachers used to have to do was then select all of this data, create a new page for it. RowCall, if you go to add-ons, so add-ons here, if you need add-ons, you can go get add-ons here. But if I do RowCall, I'm going to select all my data. And I start RowCall, what I have is a pop-up over here now, and I get to select what I want to sort by. So if I want to sort by mentor name, one tip that we've learned, or one trick, is we don't check the automatically update. We've had some really funky results when we had the automatic update. So if we want to go back and re-update it, we just do the same list, sort and update. And then what it will do is it'll go through all of my lists, and it will create a separate tab for each of them. It does all my copying and pasting for me. So now hours of work that I used to have to do with copying and pasting automatically separated out into separate pages. Love it. Our new favorite, yes. Our next problem that we had were teachers a lot of times assign a random topic to a student. So we have in one of our classes, a teacher will go around and we do a women's place project. And so the teachers basically have a list of 100 women that the students will randomly choose. And they literally had the names printed on a slip of paper, cut out in a hat, and they would go from class to class. Now they had 7 classes, so by the time you got to the 7th class, you were down to however many were left, and the last student got the last choice. And so we, of course, wanted to automate this. So there is a random generator add-on, which will let you come up with a list of items that you want to randomly assign to a category or a person, even if you're doing groups now. And this will automatically randomly pull from that value, from your list. So if these were my students, and I needed to assign these people a random value, I put my random people now here. I don't have to cut them out, go with a hat around from class to class. And if I run my add-on random generator, it lets me pick, so I create a custom list. You can also do numbers, so if you were creating groups, you could do ABC or 1, 2, 3. And you can do unique values, so I created my women to study list and I generate random values for the areas I selected. And so now it randomly assigns all those students a random person. They all get the same random value at the exact same time, so there's no waiting until block 7 to figure out, is there anybody good left? Completely random. And then we could actually use an add-on to then email the student at that time, so everybody knows at the exact same time who their woman that they're studying is. That add-on that I'm going to use, I'll go over a little bit later. Digital portfolios. So we have our English classes, and even in some of my classes, I make my students create a portfolio. Now the problem in the English classes and some of our seniors who are creating portfolios is even if they gave them a template for, I want your page titled this way, and I want your heading to be this, and your name of your site to be this, they were coming up with random stuff. They were putting subpages in random places, so it was really hard for the teacher to then go have to track down to that student, really upload a document, or I don't know what you named it, I can't find that document. So they were having a really hard time being able to follow a student's digital portfolio. The add-on that we found is called Site Maestro, and what it lets you do is the teacher creates the template site and then has a roster of students, and then the add-on will actually generate a portfolio for the student, and it's exact template, so everything is named exactly as the teacher wanted it to be named. She now has a live link. The other issue we would always have are permissions, so they wouldn't give the teacher permission to the portfolio, so they had this beautiful portfolio, but the teacher couldn't have access to it. This sets all the permissions. It gives the teacher access to it based on your template. It names it exactly as you want it to. And then it gives you a link all in a spreadsheet. So now you don't have to sort through your sites list and try and find the student's site. You have it all in one place. And then based on the template site, it names it exactly, and it has all of the pages that that student should have for their portfolio. So now we're going to kind of jump ahead a little bit more and using forms and a spreadsheet, and then we're going to add on the add-ons to that. So before, teachers would basically pass around a piece of paper. So if a student was signing up for an event, we would pass around a piece of paper, and the student would have to sign up, and then that would go to somebody, and they would have to manually type it into a spreadsheet. We also had, so at the beginning of the year, every student has to have their parents sign our authorization form and our student agreement form. And so what would happen is, in their handbook, they would tear out the piece of paper, the parent would sign it, the student would bring it into their mentor, the mentor would check them off on a list, that stack of paper would then go to Brooke. Brooke would have to enter it. Does this sound familiar to anybody? Brooke would have to enter it into a spreadsheet to make sure the whole entire school was checked off, and then have to go hunt down the people who didn't turn it in. And it went on and on and on for the entire year. So we actually turned it into a form, and then there was a tech agreement that they also had to do. So we combined it all into one. We created a digital form that then went out to the parents at the beginning of the year. And we used more of a digital signature, an electronic signature. So the agreement was in the form. Now we are a private school, so we can get away with the digital signature. If you're at a public school, you may need to check if that will work for your site. But it's been great because now it all gets filtered into a spreadsheet. It bypasses the mentor having to keep track. Brooke doesn't have to enter that into the spreadsheet anymore. We can pull a list of all the students and do a side-by-side comparison because they're all in a spreadsheet now. So we use forms to collect a lot of things. School policy agreements, also graduation ticket requests. I'm a senior moderator, and so each senior only gets a limited number of tickets, and then they would email me saying, I need 20 extra tickets. Not going to happen. You're not going to get 20 tickets. So what we did, and then we would have to sort through the emails, keep track of them all, enter it into a spreadsheet. So we turned that into a form, and now what the great thing is I can limit how many tickets you're requesting. I don't let you type in how many tickets you're requesting. I say, do you want 1 or 2 extra tickets, and then that's it. So now I'm basically forcing them to make a decision and limit their responses. And it's automatically collected for me. We also do teacher sub-requests through forms now. So we used to have to find a Word doc, fill out a Word doc, email it into our registrar. She would have to print it out. So now what we have is a form that then automatically pings our registrar if we've submitted it. So she automatically gets that notification and knows that she's going to need to schedule a sub for that day. So if you're not using forms, again, just realize it's not just for numbers. You can collect anything. Anything that you're having people sign up for, you can put into a Google form. So some of our add-ons, when we started using Forms, Forms has really built up their add-ons, and it's been really wonderful. Even the new Forms, everything is fully integrated. And some of the add-ons that we really like for Forms, or what I'm going to go over, we have our sports team have to fill out, and this is probably true for most of you, our sports team have to fill out like a 5-page document with medical insurance information, emergency contact information, and then again, that would have to be entered either into a spreadsheet. They weren't even entering it into a spreadsheet. What would happen is if a student signed up for multiple sports, the athletic director would have to take that piece of paper, photocopy it for all the sports they were in, and create a physical binder to give to the coach so that when they went to a sporting event, they had all of their paperwork in a binder if something happened. Really, really annoying to create all those documents. If a student is in 10 sports, they need to be in all 10 binders. So what we did is we used Autocrat. So now the form is online. The parents fill out all the information. It's a really long form. We do have a sample form on our spreadsheet if you want to see it. But they fill out all the information, and then it submits to a sheet. And then what Autocrat will let you do is Autocrat lets you create a template of what you want that document to look like. It's like a mail merge. And so here's what the template looks like. And so you basically create the template of what information you want, and then you use merge tags, and you use the tag names from the spreadsheet of what information you want to drop into what spots. So now all we have is one document, and when you run Autocrat, you'll go through a whole bunch of steps, and you'll set up your template. When you run Autocrat, if you had a whole bunch of students here, it now creates a doc of that information. So instead of having a physical document that would have to be photocopied over and over and over, we now have an electronic copy of it, and Autocrat lets you designate what folder to save a document into. And so now the information from the form is populated into my merge tags, and now I have an electronic version of that document. So the coach doesn't need to carry around a big giant binder anymore. Now on their phone, they have a link to their folder, and that folder has all the information for them, all in one place, and then much easier. Yes?
How did you make that template? Did you make that in
In a Google Doc. In Google Docs. So they do have, if you run through the steps from the beginning, you can generate a template in there, but it's much easier to create one in Google Doc and just use, yeah. So this was what my merge form looked like. And then if you use the two merge brackets, and then the title inside is just the header of the column that you want to pull from. Yeah. This is also on our spreadsheet. It's also on our site. So if you wanted to use this as a template or a guide, feel free to use any of this. So we also do t-shirt orders. This one used to be a big pain because students would order so many different t-shirts throughout the year for this event and that event. Again, we would pass a piece of paper around homeroom. The student, if they wanted a t-shirt, would write down their name, write down their size, and then it was handed over to the director of student life, who would then have to look through all the spreadsheets and count up how many smalls are there, how many mediums, so she knows how many to correctly order. We turned that into a form, really basic form, with the student's name and the size, much easier to read. We didn't have to try and distinguish handwriting, who actually ordered a shirt. And then she could automatically tally with a count if, or she could sort and then automatically see how many smalls, mediums, large that needed to be ordered. With that, we found the add-on called Form Limiter. And what this does is it allows you to turn on and off a form at specific times. So especially with t-shirt orders, we have to get them into the print by a certain time. And so we don't want students coming in a week later saying, oh, but I ordered a t-shirt, where is mine? So Form Limiter, if you have this add-on, it lets you set a time, either a maximum number of responses. You have a lot of different options you can set to limit the response. We use it for time. And then after a certain day, it turns off the form. So we don't have to remember to go in and turn off that form. I forget to do that all the time. Same with applications. If an application closes at a certain time, we use Form Limiter to close that application. So course applications, another one that we used to do by hand. The student, so for honors and APs, our students actually have to apply to those courses. And so they have to fill out an application statement. They used to have to go to the teacher, get the teacher to either print up a copy, or they would go online and print up a copy. It had to be a paper copy, and they would handwrite in all their information, write their statement, and then go turn it back into the teacher. The teacher then had to flip through all of them, read them all, make a decision, and then put all their decisions into a spreadsheet. So what we did is we turned their application into a form. They filled out their application in a form, already stored in a spreadsheet. All a teacher had to do was next to that student's name say yes or no, accepted, not accepted. The issue was we started getting complaints but all their information, if I see a big long block of text in a spreadsheet, it's really hard to read. I can't read it. And this happens to me all the time when I accept stuff. So this is actually a whole bunch of text, and if I scroll, then it skips right over it, and I can't read the text. Happens to me all the time, and the text is down there, and then you can use the little toolbar to get the text to show at the top, but I still can't read it. So this is what they were complaining about. So there's an add-on called Save as Doc, and what it does is it takes all that information in the spreadsheet and it creates a document form of it. So instead of having to read it in a spreadsheet now, you now have your document version that you originally wanted. So when you'll be able to give it any name you want. You can select if there are headings, and then if I save it as a doc, it gives me a link to the document right there. And so now we were able to give a teacher a link to all of their documents. You can even have it do a separate page after each one. All their information is right there. This is a new one. I really Save as Doc. Really great. I just use this, so I collect some of my assessments online, and then I go grab that spreadsheet of data, and then again, I was trying to grade it in a spreadsheet. So what I did is I ran a Save as Doc for each student in my class, and so now I have an individual document with each student's assessment there, and I could grade it right here then. I could go in and add comments, and then just share this document directly with the student, and then they got my feedback right away instead of having to wait for me to pass back a piece of paper or put a comment in a grade book. All their comments were live right here, shared specifically with them. Or you can create one giant document with all of your data. Yep, so that's kind of the process here. So the form, again, the form is linked online, so we do have our live form. This is what our form looked like. They filled out, it was a really long form. They fill it all out, it automatically populates to here, and then if you have the add-on, it's really just a couple clicks. So the add-on would be here, and then Save as Doc. Save as Doc. So I'll go back to here. And again, all of these are live linked in the presentation. So this will link you right to the add-on Save as Doc. That's been probably my favorite this past week. I just used it a lot, and it's been a big time saver. So email notifications. This one came up because at the beginning of the year, teachers would have to indicate to the dean what supervision. We're all required to do 2 supervisions and a before school or a during the school activity. So we would have to, again, print up a form, print up a document, fill out the document, go and stick it in her box, and then she would flip through all the papers and try and organize 70 teachers into all of these different events, and we never got the activity that we really wanted or said we couldn't do. So it was kind of like, and then she would email us with a specialized email just to us with here is your event. So what we have, again, we go through a form now. The teachers fill out a form selecting the events they can or cannot do. The dean has a spreadsheet now that works for her. It's a little clunky, but it works for her, and she uses conditional formatting and data validation to select what event each teacher is going to do. And then she uses Formule, which is an add-on. It's like Autocrat and Mail Merge, but this is just for email. So she'll create a templated email with the event based on what she put in the spreadsheet, and then it will send an email based on a trigger. So if Group A needs an email, it will send an email only to Group A people with their actual supervision event. So now she no longer has to hand type an individualized email to 70 different people. She groups them in a spreadsheet. I don't know if I have my spreadsheet here. No, this is a form. The spreadsheet is on my site, but she groups them on the spreadsheet, runs formule, and selects the trigger to who to send the event to. And then can also send out an email reminder now because she has the template ready to go a day before or the day of. Send out an email reminder, hey, you're group A, you need to do this supervision. All right, so now we're jumping up to using a Google form and Google Spreadsheets, and then add-ons and some formulas. So the first one, this is how our schedule building used to look. We would have a group of people that would work on one Word document, and they would hand type in, okay, here's our calendar. Week 1 we would have on the 28th, block 1, block 2, and we have a really complicated schedule. So we have a partially rotating schedule, and we have a rotating schedule and a partially block schedule. So Monday it's 1 through 7, and then we alternate Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we have special assemblies thrown in there. I'm sure every school has those funky schedules. And so in the Word doc, our team would have to go through and make sure all the numbers were correct, all the times were correct, all the values tallied up correctly, and then there would be an incorrect time. So like block 3 would end at 9:25 and homeroom would start at 9:20, and then there would be a mismatch. And then so we would have to pass this Word document around, and then on the very bottom, you don't see it here, it would say last updated, and then there would be a date it was updated, and so we never knew what was the most current version, what was the most correct version. And then he'd have to go in and fix it and resend it back out. Really complicated. And then all the times, and then had to manually add up all the times. So what we did was we created a spreadsheet to auto-populate all of those times for us so that we knew they were going to be correct, and if we made a mistake, we had to change it in one spot, and it would change it in the whole entire document. And then we could actually do a count to tally the number of minutes. And so what we used was an indirect formula. So I'll kind of explain this formula. I'm going to open up the spreadsheet and explain the indirect formula. Formulas look really scary if you've never used them before. Google has a lot of, and this one probably looks really, really scary if you haven't used formulas before. But it really just takes some getting used to and understanding what formulas are there for. So basically what this says, array formula just runs through my whole entire row basically, or my whole entire column. It says do this over and over and over again. If there's not an error, what it's going to do is indirect is like a match, a data match. So if you have rows and columns, you're trying to find two values and compare them in a row. The K2 just means look at K2 in the spreadsheet all the way through M3, so I'll go to the spreadsheet and point that out. And then you're looking for two direct matches. If you want more information about this spreadsheet, if you click on this image here, it will link you to some information about how to use indirect. There's lots and lots of resources online, so if you're not sure how to use a formula, Google it and lots of stuff will come up. There's a big community out there always helping each other out, so lots and lots of resources out there. So what my coworker did is all those crazy schedules, she created over here in the updated schedules. And so this is actually all of the times. And so these are all of our possible schedules, A block, week 1, week 2, week 3, and then an AM assembly schedule and a PM assembly schedule. These are all of our possible funky schedules throughout the whole entire year. This is what we pull from. So all she had to do was create a table of all those values in one spot. All of these are named ranges, so you can actually set up some named ranges, and so this block of data is just called AM week 1. So anytime she wants to use that block of data, she just has to use that name AM week 1. So if you set up a named range, then what you can do over here, she basically re-repeated her chart so it was easier to see over on this side. So here's my week 1, week 2, week 3, all my schedules, and these are my named ranges. So this is actually a shortcut to my data on the other page. And so over here is where we're using the formula. So we select what block type and what week we want. And then my indirect formula, what that's doing is it's looking for through K2 through M13. And K2 through M13 is from here all the way down to here. So it's just looking through my block of code. So that's what the indirect is doing. And then it's looking for a match. So what it's looking for a match for is my C2 value, which is B block, and it's looking for a match for my D2, which is week 2. So it's going to go and try and look at my table and do a match between my B block, which is right there, and my week 2, which is right there. It's going to go grab that data from that named range and plop it into my value. So if I change this from a B block to a C block, it automatically updated my times and my values right here. So now if there was a mistake in the schedule, or we need to change from a C2 AM assembly to a PM assembly, we change it right here. It automatically adjusts the time values. This is already set up so it can be downloaded and then uploaded to our Google Calendar, and it creates calendar appointments for all of these blocks now. So instead of going through a Word doc, we now have all the values in a spreadsheet, and then it's updated into our Google Calendar. So all our teachers use our Google Calendar now. Any questions? Yes. So awesome. I love it. We also came up with a new one I need to put on our resource sheet. We're currently working on a new schedule, so all of this, we're trying to totally revamp it now. And so we used a spreadsheet to set up all of our possible combinations and then do a count if to make sure all of our times matched up. I'll put that on, if you're looking at developing a new schedule, really handy so you don't have to hand calculate all those times. Timesheets. So this is another one. Our CSF teachers were spending a lot of time, so our CSF students have to do so much tutoring time, direct and indirect hours. So what they would need to do is, this is their actual timesheet. They would have to get a teacher to stamp the time. They would sign in, I started at this time, I ended about this time. They would have to calculate how many minutes it was. They would do a running total, and then over on the side, they had to actually physically add up the number of minutes. And there are 100 plus students on CSF. So then the CSF director would have to go through, verify all of these numbers, and then make sure if they could exempt their exam or do whatever they were allowed to do if they completed all their tutoring. And had now a binder of timesheets that she had to verify. So what we did, and we turned it into a form. So students now sign up through a form, and they indicate, am I starting or am I stopping? And what the form does is it will grab their actual time. So now they don't have to timestamp it. The teacher doesn't have to timestamp it. The spreadsheet will timestamp it. And then I use a vertical lookup, and so this is what I was talking about earlier. What the vertical lookup does is, so all their data comes in through here, just as if they're starting or stopping. I created a second spreadsheet called paired data, and I just grab all the data from the first form, and I make a label for them in the combined column A with their name, and then if they're starting or stopping. So I basically concatenate B and D together, and then if they are starting, what I do is I do a vertical lookup for their end time. And so what a vertical lookup will do, I say look at all the values below from where that current student is. If you see their name and the word stopping, go grab the time value and dump it into that cell. So that's what a vertical lookup does, is it looks through that column and looks for the value you're saying, I want to find this. If it finds it, it will dump it in. If it doesn't, it leaves it blank. And so I also have conditional formatting set up, so if it says stopping, I cross it out so I know to ignore that. And then I set up a simple formula to calculate the hours and the minutes. And so this is just however many minutes there are, add on however many hours there are times 60, and then subtract off. So I do the ending time minus the starting time to get the difference between the two. Now it's automatically tallied for them. The student doesn't have to tally it. The student doesn't have to fudge the numbers. Automatically timestamp with signing in and signing out. And then what I actually did is I took it a step further and created a separate sheet with the student roster. So all their names, and then just a count if, or a sum if, which will find their name, and it will sum all of their values together so that the coordinator doesn't have to go and actually add their values together. So now what she does is she just posts this live on a website, and the students automatically have a real-time value, a real-time up-to-date calculation of how many minutes have they already tutored. So this is what the sample form looks like. They select their name, and so if you are doing this, you want to have their names pre-populated so they don't type it in differently every time. If they type it in differently, this isn't going to work out because you're doing a perfect match for looking for their name. So they select their name. They say, are they doing drop-in or one-to-one? And then they say, am I starting or stopping? So then that automatically goes, and it creates a value in my paired data right away, and then the end time is not available yet until I go back in. I forget what student it was. 3? So then I can sign out student 3. It finds them, I didn't do any minutes, but it then found that stopping the vertical lookup, placed the correct value in that column, and did my tally for me. The tutoring time was specific to our school, and I actually wrote more of a script to do that, to do a comparison. You could probably throw it into the formula if tutoring time, and what I would do is I would have like a drop-in start time and a one-on-one start time. I'd probably have 2 more columns for it and make sure that those values matched.
What about the tutoring type?
Yeah.
Chose the wrong one.
So this doesn't handle if they chose the wrong one. And most sites don't really care if it's drop-in or one-to-one. But when I did it for our site, I did a little more than this here. I have it tallying separately. If you look at my spreadsheet for our actual site, there's a lot more columns in there, so I'm separating it out a little bit more. If you are interested in how that works, I can talk with you and show you how I did that.
I'm wondering if you use this form modified to do like a check and check out or books or computer resources in the room.
So the question was, if modifying this for check and check out of resources in a room? Yes. I think you can. I do know there's an add-in, I think called check in, check out. I haven't really played around with it. I think I tried playing around with it a while ago, and I was a little unsure on really how to use it. But that's the idea, is you can then, I use this, I teach an app development class, and students check out a device through a form, basically. And that way, it's not necessarily knowing how long, it's knowing who has what device and what day. Yeah, at what time, exactly. So I do use this for checking out devices in my classroom. I think some other teachers were also talking at other conferences about using this for teachers signing in and signing out, so when they come onto campus, when they leave campus, then having like a time sheet for teachers on and off campus.
Do you have that? Can you share that check out?
The add-on?
No.
Or... Well, the check and check out is an add-on. I don't have. I can try and pull some resources. I don't have it on me for the teacher, the device check and check out. I don't have that on me, but I can pull it up and I can add it to our resource page. Yeah, no problem. All right. So kind of with the check-in, this is more of a check-in, not a check-out. So our students come to class late all the time, come to school late all the time, always traffic. So what they would have to do is they would have to stand in line in the front office, already being 20 minutes late, and now there's 50 people in line. The receptionist would have to handwrite this tardy slip for every single student. So the date, the time, are they excused, sign it. It was literally 40 minutes of them just standing in line when they're already 20 minutes late. We just want you to get to class. And there were many times she was just like, there's too many people, just go to class. Not good practice either, because the teachers marked you late. How do we really know if you're on campus? So we also turned this into a form, and so now what we have is in our front office a little computer station, or we have 2 computer stations, and so the form is just the student types in their name, much faster for them to type in their name than the receptionist try and figure out what the student's name is, and they type in their reason, the block they're going to, and then who their teacher is. And then what we used is we used Formule to then draft an email template. And so then the teacher is emailed, instead of having that tardy slip, the teacher is then emailed, the student has just checked in, they're on your way to class. The dean is also CC'd so that the dean knows that the student is on their way to class. And then if the student never shows up and the teacher gets the email, can then send an email back to the dean saying the student never showed up. So much, much faster. So the idea of I have to now put in my information, and it does seem to have I have to say I haven't noticed as many people coming in late or coming in closer to the beginning of class instead of 45 minutes into class. It's really sped up that process a lot. We don't get clumps of people just rushing in when she just dismissed them. The other great thing that's happened with this is, so when she would fill out the tardy slips, she would then have to go, and because it was manual, have to go into our PowerSchool system and then manually say, yes, this student was here. By the time she got around to all the tardy slips, it was probably 1 or 2 o'clock before she got them all entered. So the dean was running around campus saying, I don't know if this student is on campus. It's not in PowerSchool, but she's signed into class, but she's not signed in here. And so now, because it's in a Google spreadsheet, the dean and the attendance person has an entire list of who is on campus. And we also do a sign out form, so they have a side-by-side list of these people have said they're signed into campus, these people have left for an appointment. Now I know exactly who's on campus in real time without having to go look at the PowerSchool system. So the question is, could you have it by teacher? Again, you could probably do something similar to the other form where you have the student's name pre-populated, and then, or the teacher's name pre-populated, or maybe separate forms for different teachers, and then depending on what class they're going to, probably lots of different ways to manage that. So when I go through all the steps, and I only have to do this once because then I set up a trigger for every time there's a new submission, it automatically runs a formula. So here's my template. So in the 2, I put my teacher because that's the teacher they selected, and then in the CC, that's where we actually manually put in the dean's email address or the attendance email address. If you wanted to get technical, you could probably have them put in their parent's email address, or if their parent is signing them in, then it could also email their parent, or if you could probably use a script to grab a parent's email on file, but you would put it in the CC. And then just like in the Autocrat, where we set up the merge tags, you just do it here in an email form.
So once it's placed in there, you say set it up, then the email's
Automatic. Yep. So we set up a trigger for when a form is submitted, and then it automatically sends an email out every time that trigger is hit. So, and then what you get in the spreadsheet is over here, send status, you get a copy of what that email, who the email was sent to. So you can confirm that the email, yes, it was sent. Love it. Okay, so I'm going to rush through our last 2. These are my favorite. Okay, so assessment calendars. This is what our assessment calendar used to look like. This actually isn't ours, but teachers would rush to get an assessment on an assessment calendar. We would have 10 assessments on a day. Teachers were naming assessments all over the place. They were putting in quiz, quest, midterm, and students were like, I have no clue what that is. I have no clue what class it's for. I have no clue. And then the other problem is I would always have this. I would have an assessment on the assessment calendar 2 weeks in advance. A teacher would put an assessment on the assessment calendar the day before and then say, nope, they have to take it. It's been on the calendar forever. And then I would go in and look, and there's no way to really tell when it was on the assessment calendar. And then I would be the one feeling bad for my students and push back my test because I didn't want them to feel overwhelmed. So what we did this year, it's been great. Teachers don't have access to the assessment calendar anymore. They have view access, and what they do is they sign up for an assessment through a form. And it's very limited. Again, kind of like the graduation tickets, they get 3 options for an assessment: a test, a project, or an essay. And that's all you can put for an assessment. What date is your assessment on? What blocks does it affect? What grade levels? Does it need to go on extended time? And then that's it. Very, very basic. And then what I did was I wrote a script to grab the information from the form. The second so my trigger is when they submit a form, it creates a calendar appointment for them and puts it on the appropriate testing calendars. That way it's named exactly as we want it to be named, and it's timestamped. So in the description, I put a timestamp of when that calendar appointment was made. So again, it's all in real time. They submit it. And if you want to try out a sample test, you could fill out the sample testing form, the link to the sample form, but it goes straight to your testing calendar. I don't know if I can find any. And then it automatically populates here. And then the teacher gets an email notification saying, yes, your assessment has put on the calendar, or no, there was an error, make sure you recheck. And so the script to do that is linked. So if you click on the image of the calendar, this is a sample script. So it does exactly what I told you. I have lots of comments in here. There are just things you need to change. So if you are familiar with script and know how to grab this, you can work with it. If you're not, feel free to email me and I can kind of guide you through how to use it. But all you would really need to change is the sheet URL to the web address of your Google Sheet, and then the calendar. You need to grab your calendar ID of what calendars you want it to go to. So my script is there if you want to adapt it or if you're not sure how to use it. So our last one that we've automated are announcements. What would happen is our director of student life would get emails every single day from students. I need this to go in the announcements. And she would spend hours and hours just weeding through her email and then would have to go and update the actual HTML on our website with the content that needed to be in the announcement. So what I did is I automated it for her. Students now submit their announcements through a form. The form then has 3 columns that I've made for her. So they submit it through a form. She has 3 columns. All she has to do, all of this is automatically populated. And then she says, yes, it's approved, no, it's not approved. If it's still relevant, she can mark it yes. If it's not relevant, she could mark it no. So she can turn off an announcement right away. New announcements go in a different color than old announcements and to the top of the page. So she could say if it's new or old. That's all she has to do. And then my script. So I have a script that will then generate all the HTML, the CSS styling. So this is, again, all customizable. It grabs the information from the spreadsheet and creates an announcement for it. And then it's automatically updated. So she no longer has to type in any code. She just has to click yes or no, approved, not approved, and all the content is updated here in the correct CSS styling that she wants. And again, it's all real time. So if I go back here and say that this one is now approved, swim tryouts, and refresh my page. Let's hope it works today. My swim tryouts is now in my announcement.
Where does that render? Where does that pop out?
So this is, when you use Google Apps Script, what it is a basically standalone application. And so I grabbed, when I run it through my scripts here, I have to remember, when I do publish, I deploy it as a web app. So now this is kind of a standalone, so you can embed it as an iframe. Yeah, you can embed it as an iframe into your website, and so now it becomes part of it. Would this work for WordPress type? I would say if you can do an iframe, it's just all you do is you get a link, a URL to a standalone application, and then you can embed that anywhere you want. So now she no longer has to type in code. Check yes or no, automatically updates for her. We do not email this to the staff. What it does is it lives on our webpage, so students, when they go read announcements every day to their homeroom, the students pull up the webpage and read it straight from there. You could probably have this emailed out to faculty and staff and parents. Thank you. So here's a link to all of my resources. Again, those scripts are available. They may need some tweaking depending on how you want to use them. If that's too advanced, hopefully you got something from maybe the other add-ons that we went through and something to help out your life.